our city council meeting. It is now 7:05 p.m. And it's October the 7th. And I officially call this meeting to order. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Council. Up next, we have a roll call. Ms. Martinez?
Mayor Coleman,
Here.
Councilor Broyles,
Here.
Councilor Daniel,
Here.
Councilor Vigil,
Here.
Councilor Hensley,
Here.
Councilor Griego,
Present.
Councilor Carson.
I'm here right now, guys. I'm just gonna stick it out as long as I can.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Carson. And thank you, Ms. Martinez. Okay, up next, we have the agenda approval.
And Mayor, I would recommend, council may have noticed, we have 2 presentations from outside agencies, as well as 2 agenda items that go along with those presentations. So I'd recommend after each presentation, the appropriate agenda item, which would be 1A and 3C, be moved up to be addressed after the speaker has done their presentation, to allow for any questions that you may have on that agenda item that the speaker can answer. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Brooks, on that note, when we get to that part, will you remind me just in case I decide to continue to move on? All right, good, thank you. Okay,
Mayor,
Councilor?
sorry. Mayor,
No,
I
go-
move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second it.
Okay, good. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Martinez, will you take the vote?
Yes, sir. Councilor Broyles,
Yes.
Councilor Vigil,
Yes.
Councilor Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Councilor Hensley,
Yes.
Councilor Griego,
Yes.
Councilor Carson.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Thank you, Council. The next item on the agenda is citizen comments. The citizen comment section is the part of our agenda where we allow people to make comments. We do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes maximum. If you are still talking at 3 minutes, I will politely ask you to end so we can move on to the next person. Mr. Sweezo, can you be the clock for me?
Sure.
Okay.
I have been replaced.
Uh-oh. I just couldn't hear your clock the other time, Heather. Sorry about that. So let's go ahead, Ms. Martinez, and invite the first person in.
Okay, for anybody on the call that wants to speak, if you want to use the raise your hand feature, there's a button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen that says raise your hand. If you're on the telephone, dial *9. And I have one person with their hand raised. It's Kyle Woodward.
Okay, Mr. Woodward. You can start, Mr. Woodward.
Okay. I'm here to speak about the upcoming hopeful change to the Protect Our Neighbors in the this COVID variants. Really, what I'm trying to do is persuade you guys, council, to help us increase capacity to more than the 50%. I guess we're going from 50% to an additional 5%, possibly. Although the 5% is appreciated, it's not near enough. 5% capacity in my restaurant adds up to 1 3/4 of a person. We've seen a big loss in revenue, obviously, because of COVID. We've been able to maintain, due to our outside seating, our sidewalk seating, and our patio seating, but soon it's going to be too cold. And all those people are going to want to come inside, and we need them inside. So far this year, just based off of our catering sales, not including our restaurant, we've lost approximately $80,000, and we can't continue to lose money. Nobody in Alamosa can continue to lose money, especially restaurants. Like I said, without going to 100% seating capacity, we could possibly be in trouble throughout the winter. I spoke to my doctor a couple weeks ago. He stated that COVID is no worse than the flu, and it's definitely not any worse than H1N1 is. I'm also on the Main Street Advisory Committee. And being on the Main Street Advisory Committee, obviously our desire is to improve downtown. But if we don't open up our businesses to where we're at 100% capacity, I'm afraid that downtown could be a ghost town by this time next year. With our food license, we're trained and trusted to keep customers safe. We do it daily. We do it with pride and we do it well. So I would hope that you would trust us with COVID as well, as far as keeping customers and our employees and staff safe. We're not in Denver. I don't believe that this is a one-size-fits-all scenario. I know that we're playing by the state's rules, but I would encourage council as well as the county to take a look at these rules and see if we can make some changes, because a small community, we're in trouble. Not just our business, but the entire community as a whole is in trouble. We're all adults. We know how to safely distance. We know how to wash our hands. We know how to wear a mask if desired, and not breathe on others. So I'm pleading with you guys to please open us up to 100% capacity. Otherwise, we're in trouble. We're in fear of becoming a ghost town. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Woodward. Okay, so something really weird just happened. All these different screens changed around and I didn't see a clock or anything. So let's go to the next person, Ms. Martinez.
She's muted.
I do not see anybody else with their hand raised. If you do want to speak, go ahead and use the raise your hand feature right now. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Sorry about the screen jump, Mayor. I tried to share my countdown timer screen.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
no hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for trying, Eric. Appreciate it. All right, so since we have no one else who's participating on the call, we'll move to the next agenda item that's on the agenda, and that is ceremonial items.
Thank you, Mayor. And then Judy, I don't know if you and Lisa can show your picture or not. Oh, there's Lisa. There we go. And you are on mute.
Here we are. No, not on mute anymore. Here we are. Technology, it's challenged, but we're here.
So tonight we want to excitedly introduce Lisa. She is our new finance director. Her first day was on Monday. I feel so blessed to be able to have someone of Judy's caliber and then having someone like Lisa coming in right behind her. I mean, we've been extremely fortunate to get such amazing people into our finance director position. So Lisa is a CPA. She has over 25 years of experience. She's worked at Wall Smith and Bateman, Colorado Health Choice, Friday Health, and then also as an independent consultant. And this is the part that I found so very attractive. She has that governmental accounting background as well, both working with the city of Alamosa, North Conejo School District, and the town of Center. And
with auditing, a lot of experience auditing governments.
So at this, Lisa, if you want to say anything, and we just are kind of welcoming you.
Other than I'm just very happy to be here. I'm excited to start this new chapter, and I think this is going to be a wonderful place to work. It is.
And thankfully, we have Judy with us until November 6th. So this is a key position, and being able to have that crossover from a training perspective and all of that, it's just an amazing opportunity. So I couldn't imagine being in a better situation.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. So Lisa, what we're going to do is I'm going to allow council members to raise their hands for those who would like to make some comments, okay?
Okay.
We'll start off with Councilor Hensley.
Welcome, Lisa.
Yay.
I feel very lucky because I got to know Lisa a bit this semester. She's actually been teaching a class at Adams State in our School of Business. And your personality, obviously you come with such knowledge, but I also think your personality and everything you have put together, professionalism, just all the different components is going to be a great fit. I know Judy is leaving big shoes to fill. And so, but I do think, Lisa, we couldn't do much better. And so you're a great person to take the spot that Judy's leaving.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, up next we have Counselor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, I just want to say thank you so much for joining our team. We're very excited to have you, and I'm really glad we get to see Judy for another month too.
Yes.
So, but just welcome and really happy to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members would like to raise their hand to make any comments? I don't see any right now. So Lisa, welcome on board. You're joining an amazing team. And Judy, I'm so glad that you get the training that you're going to get over the next month or so with Judy,
Very
and
much.
we're going to miss you. So welcome to the team. Look forward to seeing you, and we wish you much success.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Lisa.
Okay, awesome. So now that brings us to the next item on our agenda is consent calendar A. Would anyone?
To approve?
Okay, we have a motion to approve consent calendar A from Councilor Brawls. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yeah, who made the second?
Charlie?
Jan? Okay, sorry. Charlie did. Okay. Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Carson,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martinez. So that brings us to the next item under regular business, a presentation from outside agencies, the SLV Habitat Conservation Program presentation.
Okay, Mayor, I'm moving Tim Carden in, who's going to present.
Okay, hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Hello,
going
Tim.
to screen share a presentation real quick. Can you all see this presentation screen up right now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Carden. I am the San Luis Valley Habitat Conservation Plan Coordinator with the Rio Grande Water Conservation District. And I'm here tonight to give you an update on the Habitat Conservation Plan and what it is, as well as to ask for Council's permission to enroll the Alamosa Riparian Park property into the mitigation program for the HCP. Okay, so basically I'm going to go over what the HCP is, why it's needed, how it works, and then what enrolling the Alamosa Riparian Park will entail. Okay, so first off, what is the HCP? Well, simply put, it's a plan to mitigate the impact of covered activities on the habitat of 2 bird species listed under the Endangered Species Act. And in doing so, it allows these activities to continue with regulatory protection, and it aids in the conservation of both bird species. So 2 birds, first one is the southwestern willow flycatcher, which is over here on the left, and on the right-hand side, we've got the yellow-billed cuckoo. And both of these birds migrate up to the valley to breed in the summer months. They're usually here from May through to August. And they breed in woody riparian habitat, which this middle picture shows with some dense cottonwood and willow patches along streams and rivers in the valley. So why is it needed? Well, as I mentioned, both species are listed under the Endangered Species Act, and the ESA prohibits the unauthorized take of listed species. And this take can include a number of different actions, but most relevant for the city is harm and harassment through the alteration of their habitat. And there's certain covered activities that have the potential to alter habitat, However, the ESA allows for the issuance of an incidental take permit, or ITP, and as long as the activities don't threaten the survival of the species as a whole. So the HCP ultimately provides incidental take permits for each of the permittees. That's each of the counties in the valley, 4 of the municipalities, which includes the city of Alamosa, the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, and the Rio Grande Water Conservation District. The private landowners are covered by the county ITPs. So the categories that the covered activities fall under these main 3 groupings. First is routine agriculture. The second is community infrastructure projects. And the third is riparian conservation and restoration. So it's this community infrastructure category that is most relevant for the city and includes removing some vegetation from the floodway, levee maintenance, infrastructure construction and maintenance, primarily for things like sewer lines, as well as road and bridge maintenance. It doesn't cover any form of development or construction activities, including energy development projects. It also doesn't cover any projects that have habitat impacts in excess of ½ an acre for permanent impacts. And it doesn't cover activities with a federal nexus. So this is federal funding or any kind of federal permitting. There's a little note there, it's not automatically covered, but the HCP does help with this process. So how does it work? Well, we take an estimate of the amount of habitat acres that are impacted by covered activities. We've then worked to secure voluntary mitigation acres through the mitigation program to offset these impacts. And as long as the mitigation acres or credits are greater than the impacted acres, the incidental take permits will remain valid for the duration of their permits. They're 30-year permits, and they were approved in 2012. So there's additionally a habitat mapping project every 10 years to ensure that these impact estimates are accurate and we're not taking out more habitat than estimated. And all of the cities and the counties issue a habitat impact log every year. And I want to take a quick second right now to mention and my thanks to both John Resaw and Andy Rice for submitting these timely impact reports, as well as for constantly asking before a project starts if it's covered under the HCP. Now they're really setting the bar for how I hope everyone interacts with the HCP, and I hope that the other counties and municipalities involved reach this level in the future. So council should be very proud to have such great staff to work with. So what would the mitigation program involve and how would it work for the riparian park property? Well, there's 2 main components. The first is a commitment to maintain the current habitat on the property. And the second is to allow access for the district to survey both the habitat quality as well as for both of the bird species. And it's important the presence or absence of the birds doesn't affect the enrollment eligibility, and it doesn't lead to any further limits on land use. So the benefits to the city in enrolling this property: the property is already protected under a conservation easement. The only thing you're really agreeing to additionally is access for me to come onto the property and monitor the habitat and those bird species. And in doing so, it allows us to formally count the habitat acreage in the mitigation credit. And this helps ensure that those incidental take permits remain valid. Currently, we have 5 properties enrolled in the program. 4 of those are private lands, and they have the option to pull out at any time. And if we drop below the total credits needed to offset those impacts, it can kind of reduce the certainty that those permits remain valid. So it essentially helps provide additional certainty to the city as well as all of the other permittees that will remain in compliance. So with the city's permission, this summer I did survey both the habitat and the birds on the riparian park property, shown on this map here. For the habitat quality, I calculate something called a Habitat Quality Index, or HQI. And essentially this just takes various habitat attributes and ranks it for both species out of a maximum of 1. And so we got a value of 0.81 for the flycatcher and 0.73 for the yellow-billed cuckoo, for a total of 58.4 acres of riparian habitat. And these are pretty good values, and they are fairly close to some reference sites on public lands. Additionally, there was one migrant swiffle, that's a flycatcher, detected by the star. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that is really encouraging sign to show that this habitat is suitable for both the bird species. Unfortunately, we didn't detect any cuckoos, but this was consistent throughout the HCP properties. Today, I'm essentially just asking to enroll the riparian park property. However, I did hear from other biologists that the Mom Trail on the city-owned portion did have a number of flycatchers present throughout the summer. So if all goes well with the riparian park, that could definitely be a good property to think about including in the future. So in summary, some of the benefits that the HCP provides, it provides regulatory protection for otherwise lawful land use activities. It prevents the need to get individual HCPs for each of the entities involved, and this saves both time and money. And it demonstrates that lands can remain working while helping to conserve endangered species and their habitat. Ultimately, the HCP has been in place since 2012 with no noticeable impact on landowners. And hopefully we can continue successfully pushing out the HCP until the end of the permit term in 2032. So that was a real quick overview of the HCP. If you'd like some more information, the website slvhcp.com has a great source for extra information. My contact details are listed here. tim@rgwcd.org is the best way to contact me. But thank you for your time tonight. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carding. We appreciate that presentation. Heather, is this the part where we bring item 3C up to this 1A section, or do we want to open it up for questions right now and then bring 3C up to vote on?
You know, they run so closely together, there's not much difference. So I think it could be, open it up for questions, both for his presentation as well as the agenda item, because he covered both of those.
Okay. So, hold on 1 second. Okay, Council, I see I have Councilor Daniel with your hand up.
And then Mayor, just real quick, Tim, if it's possible, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Cardin, for the presentation and giving credit to Andy and John. We're very happy to have them. So I was reading the agreement, and the presentation in our packets. And so do we currently have actual properties in the HCP, or would this be the first one? I was trying to figure it out, and I'm sorry that I don't remember. I see that we're a partner, but do we have any land that's actually designated?
Sure. So the city doesn't have any city-owned property involved in it currently.
Okay.
We do have those 5 other properties. Like I said, 4 of those are private lands, and one of those is from the town of Del Norte, which is another one of the permittees.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Up next is Councilor Brawls.
Yeah, real quick again, can you summarize the benefits of this HCP to the city?
Okay, so the overall benefit of the HCP is it allows these covered activities to continue without any kind of regulatory pressure from the Endangered Species Act. The biggest impact from doing a regional one instead of the city acquiring their own individual one is that if you take all those permittees, each one would individually have to develop their own HCP, taking a lot of time and money. I think it took about 7 years for all of the groups involved to get this one approved. So there's a pretty significant savings there. And as far as being involved with enrolling the riparian park, it just provides the city additional certainty that will maintain sufficient mitigation credits to offset those impacts throughout the duration of the permits. And
Tim, and to kind of help with this, because I'm not a technical expert like you, so I'm going to put it a little bit more into my layman terms. So the city needs to be part of something that would help offset some of the activities we might do sometimes as a city. So one of your examples was the levee. If we're working on the levee and that might impact wildlife habitat, by looking at these formulas and making sure we still have the right percentages covered, it allows us to do some of that activity legally. And so the big benefit is that we can do some of that. It covers us. We're part of this regional one, which helps from the work of time and all of that. And since this one already has a conservation easement, we're not further restricting the property beyond what it's already restricted. Is that another way of saying it?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Does that answer your question, Councilor?
We can
Roy?
work on, we can work on the levy without having been affected with the Endangered Species Act. Is that what you're saying?
We still need to be mindful, but this does allow us for areas that we need to do that kind of work. It makes sure that there's still enough habitat that's protected.
I see Councilor Griego with your hand up.
Yes, my question is almost in the same line as what Heather just said. You know, we deal with trails and stuff like that, Tim. If we're to be involved in this, what restrictions would we have as far as trails? And I know you said that we can continue working the property as long as, I guess we don't disturb these two endangered species. Could you kind of expand a little bit on that, and what would stop a project or something if we were to be involved?
Okay, so the mitigation program wouldn't stop any kind of activity happening on the riparian park or any other properties you enroll. Basically, the conservation easement may, on certain respects, because the riparian habitat is listed as one of the conservation values. So there's nothing additionally that may impact it. The HCP does cover certain small impacts from the use of trails. And then Andy's always been really good at reaching out and kind of checking ahead of time for new trail plans as to whether it's going to impact any habitat. And usually the easiest course of action is just to reroute it ever so slightly, and you're not going to end up with any habitat impacts.
And then, Andy, to answer Councilor Griego's question as well, let me ask it a different way. So everything we've presented to council in regards to what we're planning to put out there as far as like the trails, some of the restoration, all of that, we'll obviously be working to make sure we do it in an appropriate manner, but we're not restricted from doing anything we've already presented to council, correct?
Oh, that's correct.
Does that answer?
And more than that, I think, and Mr. Carden, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we're not restricted by enrolling the park in the HCP doesn't add any restrictions at all. All it does is enables Mr. Carden to come and do assessments and see what the conservation value or the habitat protection value is. If it's gone down, it's gone down. We are restricted by our conservation easement, but that has nothing to do with the HCP.
Right, that's how it works. And essentially the only kind of impact, if there was any acreage from either like a natural cause or there was some kind of project that reduced it, the only thing that'll do is lower the total amounts of credits that we can use to offset. So that's one of the kind of drawbacks, but it's not going to prevent anything from happening.
Okay,
One more
Council-
comment, if I may, Mayor, for Tim.
Sure.
So this is, in a sense, it's a contract that, what is the longevity of this contract? A year, 10 years, 20 years? And is it?
That it remains in effect as long as the city is a permittee to the HCP, which is currently scheduled to end in 2032. If the city were to leave the HCP, then that would void this contract. So it's essentially just a way to help provide greater certainty for everyone, including the city, that we're going to maintain sufficient acreage, because like I said, the private landowners, they can leave whenever they want to. And right now, one of the largest ones, if they were to pull out, that would push us below the mitigation credits that we need to offset those impacts.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Councilor Grego. I don't see any other hands raised. So I believe this is the section on the agenda to where we're supposed to bring up an item for a motion. So we're going to go to item B1A, a motion to authorize the city to enroll the Alamosa Riparian Park as a mitigation of the San Luis Valley Regional Habitat Conservation Plan. I see Councilor Daniel.
Mayor, if there's no further discussion, I move that we authorize the city to enroll the riparian park as part of the Habitat Conservation Plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? If not, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the roll?
Yes, sir. Counselor Carson,
Yes.
Counselor Behill,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Appreciate your time. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. Welcome. Up next on the agenda, the regular business, item A2, a presentation from Alamosa County Health Department on Protect Your Neighbor application.
Okay, and I'm gonna allow Della into the meeting now.
Okay.
Hi, Della, are you there?
I'm here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start our slideshow from the beginning. So as you know, I'm here to talk to council today about the Protect Our Neighbor application that the local public health agencies of the San Luis Valley are preparing for submission to the State Health Department. So what is Protect Our Neighbor? We've been through a series of steps in this COVID journey so far. Our first stage was stay at home. Everybody needed to stay at home to keep each other safe, to allow our systems to work, to put in actions that could help protect us all from exposure to the coronavirus that causes COVID. After that initial 30 days, we did move into the Safer at Home stage, which we've been in for several months. This stage, as you're aware, has a variety of controls and opportunities for different sectors of the community to operate under some safety restrictions. Protect Our Neighbor is actually a more open phase, but it's also a more consistent set of requirements and guidelines for different sectors in our community. So I mentioned that we're applying as a region. Each one of our local public health agencies, directors like myself, are presenting to a variety of decision makers in our communities to talk about how we're going to operate in this new level of openness if we are granted certification. The biggest one is, are the first two on the top of this list. We can tap into economies of scale across the region and still allow local flexibility. And what do I mean by that? I'm very much speaking in terms of disease control and prevention. A larger denominator that we're able to work with allows us flexibility at the local level. So for example, if Alamosa County experiences a spike in cases, if we had to use only our county denominator, it would probably move us to a different level with higher restrictions. If we're using the region as a denominator, it gives us time to respond to what may be contributing to the increase in disease cases without having to shift out of protect our neighbor and then back in again when our numbers come back down. It really provides stability, not only to our response, but it lessens that likelihood that our communities are going to have to move back and forth between these state defined levels. And it also helps us with consistent messaging across the region. A lot of folks who may work in Alamosa County may live in another county and vice versa. And if the county in which one works has a different set of restrictions and guidelines than the county in which one lives, it can get confusing really fast. So this is very much linked to the new dial that the state has in place. And you can see a picture of it up here, but really it's easier to read this larger text. Right now, Alamosa County, along with 4 other counties in the valley, are at the safer level 2. Mineral County is actually at safer level 1. So when the state moved into this new dial mechanism, which has protect our neighbor at the most open end and stay at home at the most severe end, all of the counties got migrated into this middle level. It's very consistent with where we're operating at this point in time. And it gives us some time to determine if our numbers are indicating that we can shift up to one of these 2 more open levels. Now, in order to move into protect our neighbor, we have to achieve compliance with 8 different metrics that the state has lined out in order to be certified. And so we've been working together for the past several months as regional public health agencies to put together how we will monitor our compliance with these metrics and also what our mitigation plan will look like. So we're really near the end of that planning process. And that's why I'm speaking to you today. Now, these 8 metrics relate to these 3 general categories. How many new cases do we have over a period of time? What does the percentage of positive test results look like in comparison to tests overall? And then there are several measures that are related to hospitalizations and the capacity of our hospital to respond to potential surges. And here I am speaking primarily about the SLV Regional Medical Center, since they are the COVID receiving hospital in our region. Although we are presenting this conversation to Rio Grande Hospital as well, and pursuing a letter from them. So what's basically different about Protect Our Neighbor? You heard a little bit about this difference from Mr. Woodward earlier this evening. But basically, it eliminates sector-specific capacity limits. So gone will be the days where restaurants may have different restrictions than gyms, which may have different restrictions from hair salon, which may have a different set of guidelines from life rights or outdoor events. All of those things have specific capacity limits that are the same. And that's basically these here. Approved counties, or in this case, regions, can open to 50% capacity across all sectors. The upper limit is 500 people total. And so it's either 50% capacity or 500, whichever is lower. So that takes into account the social distancing that needs to take place, particularly in indoor settings, but even in outdoor settings, that contribute to this 50% capacity. What it also does is that it allows gradual increases of our capacity threshold over time. So every 30 days that we remain in the metrics that are associated with Protect Our Neighbor, we can increase by 5%. So it really does have the community as a whole working together for this Protect Our Neighbor status built into it. If we're all working together to keep the protections in place for each other's safety, we can remain and protect our neighbor and increase our capacity by 5% each month. So I mentioned that we have a mitigation plan in place, and the mitigation plan not only describes how we will address particular illness clusters or cases in our community, it also asks us to describe how we will promote that broader public participation. So in all our interactions, we've already been working to promote compliance with guidelines. But this will continue into our Protect Our Neighbor phase. Things like social distancing, mask wearing, hand hygiene, stepped up cleaning of common use surfaces. These will still be part of our messaging to the community because these are critical steps in keeping disease at manageable levels in our community. We've been actively involved with helping businesses and other community partners to comply with guidelines, and that will continue as well. We've been putting together a public information campaign. We've been building a dashboard specific to the San Luis Valley so our community can see how each one of our counties are doing. And it's a place where we can continue to share public information and press releases so that the community is up to date on how things are progressing in our communities. Now, these are not very good resolution images, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. This is taken directly off of the State's Dial website, and I wanted to show partly this page, but really this second page. You can see that these are the different safer at home levels here. This is Protect Our Neighbor, and this is Stay at Home. So basically in Stay at Home, everything is either remote, virtual, takeout, depending on what the business is. And in Protect Our Neighbor, everything is pretty much at that 50% capacity or 500, as long as 6 feet between parties can be guaranteed. There are some additional guidelines here for education sectors. But when you really look at these different sectors, our businesses in our community have been working with public health over the last several months to make sure that they've been compliant with whatever these capacity restrictions have been for their operations. There have been specific guidelines, there have been limitations, and it's really taken a lot of energy and effort on behalf of our businesses to ensure that they're compliant as possible. And I can't tell you how many have reached out to me personally to help them walk through these sector-specific guidelines. If you look over here in the Protect Our Neighbor category, it's all 50% or 500, whichever is lower. And they all have the same opportunity to increase by 5% each month if we remain in Protect Our Neighbor. So it really does even out expectation and requirements. So what are the things that we need to submit in order to certify for Protect Our Neighbor. So first of all, our measures, of course, have to fall within the Protect Our Neighbor limits. We have to have a mitigation and containment plan in place. What will we do if our illness numbers start increasing outside of the Protect Our Neighbor thresholds? We have to submit a surge plan. How will public health specifically expand our testing, case investigation, and contact tracing capacity if needed? And this is also one of the reasons why operating on a regional level here is important, because our testing partners are our healthcare system. This is SLV Health, this is Rio Grande Hospital, and this is Valleywide Health Systems. So we really need to be able to work with our regional partners as a region in order to have consistency from community to community. And so that's really another important reason why applying as a region is the most beneficial for the San Luis Valley. And then finally, the reason I'm here speaking to you about this tonight, we need letters of attestation to show support for a mitigation and containment plan, support of local public health directors as we work together to meet the thresholds and to stay within the thresholds of Protect Our Neighbor, and then a commitment to use one's office or agency's tools and resources to encourage compliance with our mitigation plan and any active public health orders, and to take appropriate enforcement actions when needed. And I think that this enforcement piece is one that folks have had a lot of questions about, and I expect that this council will have questions as well, because you've gone through your own conversations about what enforcement should look like for you. And that's not the level of enforcement that I'm necessarily talking about here. You'll see further on the entities that we need to get these letters from. So our hospitals need to agree to our plan because there are specific measures associated with those hospitals. Local public health directors, of course, we're the ones who are going to be implementing this. But then we've got decision makers like yourselves, county commissioners, mayors, emergency managers, police departments, and sheriff's offices. So these are the entities in the community that really help support our messaging in our day-to-day activities in the community. We're not asking anybody to be the mask police or the social distancing police or to put everybody in jail if they're not complying with something. I'm not even asking you to create a local ordinance or a judicial pathway for any of these things. But it is crucial that we all work together as entities on this list to ensure that our community understands what the guidance says, what the protections are that we can each take in individually and why those are important. And also importantly, what we will need to do if illness increases and we do need to put further restrictions in place. And that's really where that public health support and enforcement / encouragement role really comes into play. We all want to move forward. We all want less illness in our community. We all want less economic impact from this pandemic. But it's also likely that we will see increases in illness periodically as we move towards vanquishing this pandemic. So we need to be able to take those actions jointly if we need to take that step back. And whether that means working together to help a business stay closed for a couple weeks while their outbreak diminishes, or whether it's a broader community level control because we have to move back to one of those safer at home levels. We need to be able to work together. And that's really what this is asking here in this letter of attestation. So in order to obtain that letter from both Mayor Coleman and our police chief, Anderson, I need to ask the council today to authorize them to do that. But let me describe a little bit about what might happen if we do fall out of compliance. Because it may happen. In fact, it may be likely to happen at some point. If we fall outside the required limits of protect our neighbor, we've got a 2-week grace period. So what we've done with our mitigation plan is we've put in indicators that we've called warning signs, things that are on the protect our neighbor side of that particular threshold. So that as we're approaching that threshold, we can take some actions and implement some early interventions, targeted interventions to help us remain and protect our neighbor. So in that first 2-week period, as we put those interventions into place, at the end of the 2 weeks, we'll meet with the state health department and we'll say, this is what we've done in response to these things that we've seen in relation to our increased number of cases. And if we are moving in the right direction, the state health department will give us an additional 2 weeks to work towards getting our numbers back into protect our neighbor or further away from that threshold. So we've put together in our mitigation plan some early warning signs. This buffer here of the initial 2 weeks and an additional 2 weeks if we need, and we're doing the right things, will really help us stay consistent for our businesses, our community members, our schools, and all of the other folks that we recognize are impacted differently at each of these different levels. So finally, what is our timeline? Our goal is actually to submit this Friday. So we will need, hopefully, our letters before then. Once our approval is received, the Public Health Partnership will roll out an information campaign. I mentioned a couple of those items to you earlier, but we're also creating some informational videos and other presentations. And we'll be rolling out our own regional dial, as I mentioned earlier. So just in relation to this, you may be seeing in some of our press releases over the last few days, our numbers are increasing in the San Luis Valley. We asked the folks that are managing this Protect Our Neighbor process at the State Health Department today that even with the numbers that we're seeing now, can we still submit? And they said, absolutely. If you need a couple weeks to address your numbers, see what's going on, see if things can be stabilized or if numbers are continuing to grow, we'll just hold that application for you. So we do still have Friday the 9th as our target date, despite the fact that our numbers have increased over the last few days. So I did want to let you know that as well, because you've probably been seeing some of the press releases that we've been issuing over the last couple of days. So that's basically my presentation to you today about our Protect Our Neighbor objectives for the region. I'm not sure at this point if all of our counties are on board. I hope they are. It's always better to work together than to work separately. We're small communities with limited resources. But I will certainly keep you up to date on this process and any other developments associated with our application. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Della. So At this time, I'm going to open it up for questions for council, and then council, shortly after we go through all of the questions, what I'll do is I'll bring item 3C up for us to make a motion if we decide to move forward with this. So I will recognize those who have their hands raised. So please raise your hand so I can see you, and I will call you in the order in which I see your hands. So first up, I have Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Vio, followed by Councilor Carson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Della, for the presentation. I really appreciated it. There was a piece in your presentation that I didn't quite understand regarding it was the top box on the second page that said there were certain site variances that could be. Is that for specific events, or is it similar to what Mr. Woodward was saying earlier about increasing for certain sectors? Because I got what his request was sounded different than what you presented, and I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand something.
Yeah, no, I mentioned variations, not variances specifically. Variances could potentially still be available to entities that are in a jurisdiction that is in protect our neighbor status, but it would be for specific events. Parade, a rodeo, other types of gatherings could still apply for an event-specific variance. But that 50% or 500 total, whichever is lower, is actually the threshold for any business or any other type of gathering in a community that is under Protect Our Neighbor.
Great.
So, for example, the city or Alamosa County or even the San Luis Valley region couldn't ask for a higher threshold than 50% at this point.
Okay.
Those are the limits that are established by the state.
Okay. Thank you, Della, for that. I appreciate that. And I didn't say at the beginning too, I can't imagine what your life has been like since early spring this year. So just thank you for your diligence and work, and just know that I know this hasn't been easy, and I just really appreciate your commitment to the safety of our communities, and that you've hung tough, and we appreciate it so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Up next, we have Councilor Vigil, followed by Councilor Carson.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Della, thank you for your presentation. I had a few questions. Could you expand more on the testing piece? I know we need to expand our testing as a region. What does that look like, and how is that going to be accomplished?
So we've been working with our healthcare partners already to determine what our testing capacity is. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean testing within that facility. It can be testing within that facility, but it can also include testing that is completed by send out labs. So for example, when I talked with Dr. Hernandez at the hospital last week, we talked about this item specifically. And I asked him to define for us what the testing capacity is at SLB Regional Medical Center. They do have internal testing capacity, but then they also send out. And so he gave me their numbers, and we also work closely with Valleywide here in Alamosa County. I don't typically have that many folks that get tested at Rio Grande Hospital, but I do know that they test there as well. So as a region, we need to be able to guarantee a certain level of testing, and we are already achieving that in our community. The only thing that would impact that would be if testing supplies were impacted, or if the laboratories that do the test analysis for us are impacted somehow, and their capacity to meet their own thresholds and guidelines are limited. But our healthcare partners have been working really, really hard over the last several months to increase capacity, as has the state. And that capacity is easily meeting the thresholds for Protect Our Neighbor.
Okay, thank you. And then you said that you were going to submit this on the 9th. What's the turnaround time for if it's approved or not?
You know, and I don't know that, Council V Hill. I've asked a couple partners around the state who have gotten their Protect Our Neighbor status, and it's been a little different depending on who I spoke to. So I'm not sure how many applications they're actually processing right now.
Okay.
That remains to be seen.
Okay, and then you mentioned at the end there that you don't know yet if other counties or municipalities are all going to buy in.
Mhm.
What if a county doesn't buy in? What happens then? Are they just out of the regional approach?
Not necessarily. What we will do is we will apply with the counties that are on board. We're all meeting with our city councils and our county commissioners, our boards of health, primarily this week. So until we have all those letters in place, I can't guarantee that all 6 will participate. If there's only 5, we'll apply with 5. If there's only 3, we'll apply with 3. But I really think that any combination is going to be better than trying to maintain our thresholds and work together better than trying to do it individually. So my hope is all 6 of us are on board, but if not, we'll apply with whomever is interested in working together.
Okay, and then I do really like you mentioned the warning signs and the targeted interventions for that. I think that's really good. However, I talked to a few business owners today, restaurant owners downtown, and the cold weather's coming in. The outdoor seating is going to be wrapping up probably like this weekend. There's some weather coming in this weekend. They will not get through. So two businesses told me they probably won't be able to get through the winter. One said he'll get by barely. Why can't we, as a city of Alamosa, just say this? Say restaurants 75%, starting let's say November 1, and then go 5% from there. I think that's reasonable. I think it's smart. I think it helps them, and it still keeps people safe at the same time.
Well, it would be in violation of the existing state public health order, which does include language around protect our neighbor. The threshold capacities for our safer at home stages 1, 2, and 3 are less. I recognize that probably doesn't mean a lot for a small restaurant that's probably already operating at 50% capacity, whether the threshold is 50, 100, or 500, because it's a small business. But I don't think that any jurisdiction at this point has the flexibility to establish parameters outside of protect our neighbor, which is the highest level of openness that's available under the current public health orders and executive orders of the governor.
So if we just said we want to do this, what could happen?
I don't know. I'm not a law enforcement expert. I don't know what actions the state could or would take. Perhaps Mr. Schwiesel would have a better response to that than I would.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know what actions the state could or would take either, but I can tell you that we do not have the authority to do it. So if you wanted to do it, I would want to talk with you in executive session before you did so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Vigil. Up next, we have Councilor Carson, followed by Councilor Griego.
Why would that, I have several questions, but this is the answer to Eric's question just now, or comment. Why would that have to be discussed in executive session if we were wanting to buck this? Because I mean, that's public, you know, we need to discuss this in front of our constituency. they're
Because
the
I
ones
would
that
be
are-
essentially giving your constituents a roadmap to suing the city.
Say that again, then I guess I didn't understand what Councillor Vihil said. What did
So
you say?
We do not have the authority to do that. If
To
you
do
want to
what?
talk about doing it anyway, I want to do that in
To not
executive
obey
session.
are you saying we don't have the authority to not obey the stay-at-home order or protect thy neighbor? That's what you're saying?
We do not have the authority to set limits that are more permissive than the protect your neighbor, which is the most permissive that the State Department of Public Health allows.
I think you're muted, Councilor Carson. There you go.
No, I'm thinking, the thing is, yeah, we do have, I mean, as a council, if we were to vote, we can do that authority, and then we would have to deal with the fallout, of course, but we do have the authority to mandate that from our city staff.
No, you have the authority to direct your city staff not to enforce regulations.
That's what I
If
mean.
you do that, you have sabotaged the application for Protect Our Neighbors. But yes, you do have that authority.
Well, and then that was my next question is, I still haven't seen the letter, the actual letter. I can't find it, and I apologize. Maybe I'm just having a hard time with that, but I wanted to read the language in the letter because as Della did her presentation, it brought up a lot more questions for me. It kind of sounds like they're wanting us to commit to a tighter enforcement, to maybe a quicker enforcement to help keep this going. And I personally have tons of issues with this. Governor Polis is not giving logical mandates at this point. He really isn't. I know that people don't agree with me, but I mean, he just appointed a vegan to be the head of our livestock veterinary council, which to me is very backwards. And these are the kind of decisions that he's making constantly. My next question is, you know, how long is it going to be before we got to put our mask back on between bites? That's the advice they're giving people in California today. And I don't see this. I've gone through it. I actually had a conversation with Della about it, and I've gone through it. And to me, it, in a sense, incrementally gives us crumbs at the will and the whim of our governor. And I'm having a harder time with this every day with the mandates that he's passing. I mean, we're at 177 executive orders in 6 months. That's ridiculous. And it's probably a countrywide record. So I think we need to think about this, you know, and I advise this of Della as well. I think we need to start approaching this in a way that maybe, you know, the will of you know, His Highness Polis is not the way we should be going. And I'm sorry, I'm really fed up with it. We're all being held hostage by this man at this point.
And Councillor Carson, regarding where the letter, it's attached to the agenda item, and I'm doing share my screen right now. So that's the letter that was drafted that meets the requirements for the attestation letter. So that's the language right there. It's attached to your agenda item.
Thank you. I couldn't find it earlier. I'm reading it now. We can move on. I'll read through, and if I have any other questions, I'll raise my hand again.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. We have Councilor Griego followed by Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. Bella, as Chris says, thank you so much for what you're going through. I just can't believe how tough it's been for you and how you've handled it. And one of the questions I was going to ask, and Vihil, Councilor Vihil kind of asked it also, is the time frame of turning this application in and how soon you know, we're able to expand to that 500 or 50%, you know.
Mhm.
Have you noticed, Della, that if, you know, we tried it one time before, would we probably be looked at right away because we tried it one time before and it wasn't successful?
Well, Council Gallego, the application that was made before was for a variance.
Right.
And so it was a really different process. I think the difference with this Protect Our Neighbor certification for me is that it really does ask for a lot of collaborative action up front. We really do need to show the State Health Department that we are unified as a community in our effort. And that really wasn't part of the variance process. The variance process required a mitigation plan, but not to the detail that this mitigation plan has to be. And it didn't ask for any letters of attestation to show any collaboration within the community. And so I think that with this type of process, we come to the table with a different understanding by the state health department. We wouldn't really be able to make application that was ready for consideration if we didn't have these collaborative conversations like we're having right now. And we didn't have some shared understanding about what we're committing to do together. And that's really a big difference for me. So I think that really influences how our application is received at the State Health Department as well.
Okay, but my second question, we are planning on having a Veterans Day parade, and we've already submitted our permits to the state, to the city. And I appreciate the stuff that you sent me on it, but I'm still a little confused of, do we have to put together some kind of a plan? I'm talking to our city manager, we have to present something. So, you know, and hopefully this will take effect before, which will allow us to have, I don't know how many people would go to parades. I don't know if the 500 would be the amount out there watching the Veterans Day parade. So I like I said, I'll probably, it's been hard to get in hold of you because I know you're busy to try to put together something to present. I guess we'll have to present that to the city in order to proceed to get a permit from the city. I don't know if that's the way it works.
Absolutely. And I will make sure that I keep all of you updated on whatever happens with the submission of our application and any feedback that we get, so that you're very well aware of how the timeline is unfolding moving forward.
Thank you, Della.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Up next, we have Councilor Brawls.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are happy with the mandate. I think it's behind the times. But needless to say, you know, I guess we could hope that on October 12th, the governor does not extend the same mandate. He loosens it up. But I think he's already spoken with this PON program. You know, we have to do what we can. If we have to follow the rules, get most of our businesses opened up. And I see two advantages here. First of all the sectors of the, you know, in the business can be open to 50%, rather than some being 25 and some being less than that. So that's an advantage. And the other advantage, you know, the 500, up to 500 people, I think that's an advantage. And so it is loosening up. The other thing I like is it's going to increase by 5%. So the first month is 50%, and we can go to 55%, then to 60. In 5 months, we could be up to 80%. So that's an advantage. So I think, you know, in all said, it's worth our time. It's worthwhile to approve this and move on and see if we can get state approval.
Thank you, Councilor Brawls. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with you, Mr. Broyles. I think this is a good first step. And I didn't mean to, I wasn't trying to communicate not to, you know, open it up for, you know, I'm just worried about our restaurants, y'all. Like, what, I think we as a council need to talk a little bit about what are we going to do? What can we do? What more can we do for restaurants when it gets cold? People, how are they going to survive? What are we going to do? And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm looking at the other 6 of you guys. What any ideas, stuff that we can, I don't know. And we could lose a few restaurants on Main Street this winter if I don't know, and I'm frustrated. And I guess that's where I'm at. I get another question, and I would like some comments from some of y'all on some ideas. But another question I had for you, Della, is what about churches? Would they be able to open up a little bit more capacity?
They would be at the same 50% or 500, whichever is less.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor
Our
Vigil.
governor.
Thank you, Councilor Vihil.
John, I don't think that we won't lose them. I mean, I think it's a definite. I've talked to some of these same restaurants and we will. And again, that's my point is, there's, I don't disagree that there's, health concerns, but I just don't see that us destroying our economy and, our Main Street is worth what we're being asked to do at this point. And I get it. I don't mean any offense to the healthcare officials out there. I really don't. I know it's your job and I know, that you're doing what what your job is and what you feel is in everyone's best interest. But I think at this point, following the rules and just doing as we're told here is not going to do anything but be detrimental to our community. And the reality is I don't think he will lift the mandate. I think he'll keep it tight. And the problem is that we have a Democratic run house and it doesn't matter. I mean, you can do what you want. You can try to recall the governor, but it's futile. We have a Democratic run house. And I think until some of those powers that he has are talked about and some of these mandates are discussed by our Senate and our House, we're held hostage. And that's the hard part. We are held hostage right now because we have no choice but to abide, or we don't get the 5%. And I'll tell you what, the 5% isn't going to appeal our constituency at all. At least not our business. It's not going to make them happy. It's not going to help them. Like Mr. Woodward said earlier, that's equivalent to 1.5%. I mean, how do we realistically expect these businesses to survive? We can't keep offering them loans and then they borrow out their whole business and the city owns them. I just think at this point, as a county, our county commissioners, we need to start having some bigger conversations about this. This is, as a region, it doesn't affect, it affects our region differently than it does the metro. And I think the reality is that the governor's catering to his voter base, which is in the metro. And, it may not be something we agree on, but we're going to lose businesses. And, it's going to be something that we could have probably done something about. And yeah, maybe we would have caught flack with it. Maybe he could have withheld some CARES funding, but I've read enough into it that I don't think he can hold direct state funding unless the Democratic run Senate again targets a municipality. And, it's not that far fetched, but where do we stand up and where do we draw the line? Where do we make our own decisions as a community? I mean, we have great health officials around here and we have great health capabilities around here. This is we do. Right now, we don't have nearly the emergency state that I believe would constitute us being in this strict of a lockdown still. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Up next is Councilor Hensley.
So I agree with Councilor Vihil is that I am concerned about our restaurants, especially, and I don't have a solution right now, and I'm racking my brain. But I do think we need to make this a priority of what do we do to get through the winter. And obviously, yes, the 5% help, but we don't even know when this starts. And so I don't think so when you ask that you want to hear us say something, I agree. And I think we obviously get creative, maybe see what other communities are doing. Because obviously this is, when you go to the metro, is affecting them as well. And so, like I said, I guess I don't have an answer today. I want to have an answer, but I do put this in the forefront as well as what can we do, whether it's to help them open up more, help them get through the winter. I mean, whatever those options are. But I agree with you that this needs to be something, whether we maybe have a brainstorming session, that type of thing.
Thank you, Ms. Hensley.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Hensley. Up next in order, I have Councilor Broyles, followed by Councilor Vihil.
No, I think we're talking about two different issues here. The first issue is, are we going to approve this, protect our neighbor, which I think is a step forward. I mean, we're not going backward, we're stepping forward. Maybe not to the degree we want to. And then the other issue is what Councilor Carson's been talking about, how do we help our restaurants? How do we step this up? But really, I think we need to keep our comments here on PON, and then later on talk about how we help restaurants to a greater magnitude.
Thank you, Councilor Brawls. Okay, do we have any other councilor comments? Because I don't see any hands raised. We don't? Okay, so I'm just gonna, I have a brief comment to Della. Thank you so very much for the time and dedication and effort you've been putting in to your job and your staff for all the work you've done over these past several months. And Mr. Sweezow, thank you so very much for clarifying the exposure that the city has and the potential liabilities that we could face. And it's not that we do not want our businesses to open or to open to a greater capacity. I think more importantly, we have to follow any guidelines, and we also have to make sure that we keep the public health and safety as a priority as we move forward. That's what we are to do as leaders, to make that, to set a good example for the people in our community. And I believe all of us have deep down in our heart, we would like for every business to be open to 100% capacity, but we know that that's impossible at this particular time. But the matter at hand today, right now, is the approval of the letter so that we can go to the protect your neighbor's status and hopefully help those businesses that are still around right now, and hopefully it'll continue to expand. So Della, the question I have for you is on a more of a positive looking forward note. Has there been much thought into what is the next phase after the protect your neighbor's status? Have they talked about what that's going to look like and how long it will take before we start getting to that level?
I haven't heard anything about the next phase beyond protect our neighbor at this point, Mr. Mayor. I was on the statewide work group for the dial system that I demonstrated briefly. I was the rural representative for public health to that group. And we didn't talk about anything beyond protect our neighbor, even within that work group. So I'm not sure what the next steps might look like in terms of further opening.
If I might just add a little comment, if it would be very helpful to communities, not just like communities like ours, but across this great state, for them to have a vision board of what's next, so people would have something to look forward to and work towards. So to just cut it off at protect your neighbor right now without a future vision, that could cause a lot of people to lose hope. So I would just hope that you would share that with your committee and let them know that it would be very helpful for us to know what it looks like down the road, so people can just hold on to a little bit of hope.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will take that forward.
Okay, thank you. So council, what we're going to do now, since I don't see any other hands raised, we'll go ahead and move up item 3C on the agenda. And it's a motion authorizing mayor and police chief to sign a letter of support for the Alamosa Department of Public Health application for the Protect Your Neighbor status. I see Councilor Griego with your hand up.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Sir, Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Behill,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Carson.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay. Della, thank you so very much again for your time and sharing all this helpful information with us. And we wish you and your team the best.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the time and the great attention to the topic. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, council, up next on the agenda, it brings us to, I believe it's B, item B, resolution 12 20, a resolution supporting a grant application for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Who's going to talk on that?
Mayor, I'm going to speak on that.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Surprise, surprise, Parks and Rec seeking another grant. I'm excited to talk to you guys about this this one. Resolution 12-2020 is a state trails planning grant as we look at our long-term vision of connecting all our incredible places along the Rio Grande. So as far back as maybe 15 or 2016, we started looking at ranch to refuge, and it is a little bit overwhelming as we look to connect all the way from north to south in Alamosa. But what we've done in this time, as you all know, is developed our trail systems that will feed into the arterial, hopefully one day, main trail. So we've developed the Malm system. We've worked on the Oxbow trails. We have the riparian park trails. So this planning application kind of looks at a broader system. It's really a master planning effort as we look to connect the riparian park all the way down to the refuge. We know that it's not easy, it's complicated. There are firms that have done this type of stuff across Colorado. We've been talking to them. Anyway, just like GOCO requires a resolution sometimes for these grant applications, we come to you today for your support.
Breaking up.
You're breaking up, Andy.
Okay, so Andy, you're breaking up. I think he was wrapping it up though. It sounded.
Sorry, was it?
It sounded like he was saying that we're bringing this before you now so we can get a resolution to support the application for the planning process and to kind of help give us a good strategy on how to start working on that main arterial. Are you back, Andy? You were kind of cutting out pretty bad.
Yeah, maybe too many devices on the network, but yeah, that's surmised it well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. Okay, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you, Andy. My husband and I were actually walking on the riparian park the other day and talked about how nice it would be to be able to connect all the trails. So I am 100% in support of this and really excited, recognizing it's going to be quite difficult to manage, but really excited for the planning process. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. I don't see any other hands raised, so if anyone would like to make a motion, feel free to.
Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 12-2020 as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? I don't see any hands raised, so Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Vigil,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Carson.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is going to be the first reading of ordinance number 25-2020.
So thank you, Mayor. It is crazy to think that we are in October and we're doing our first readings for the budget and pay plan for 2021. So that's what this agenda item is related to the pay plan. As we've discussed in previous years, the city manager is only authorized to hire personnel that fit within the pay plan as set forth by City Council. The only change that we have to this pay plan from 2020 going to 2021 is a 1% increase, which is included in the 2021 budget. And so it shifts the whole plan by 1%. There are two positions that are not within the pay plan. That is the city manager and the municipal judge. So the attached ordinance does apply that 1% to those two positions as well. As we discussed in the budget, we plan to monitor our expenses and our revenue and see where we are mid-year to potentially see if there's another increase we can do, but that would be in 2021. So the item before you is first reading to approve the pay plan.
Okay, council. I don't see any hands raised, but if anyone would like to make any comments or either make a motion, please feel free to do so at this time.
And I forgot to mention and set it for public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I move
Yeah, I
that
don't-
we approve ordinance number 25, 2020 on first reading and set it for public hearing and second reading on October 21st, 2020 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? If not, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Vihel,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Carson,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, council. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. And thank you, Heather, Ms. Brooks. Up next we have is on the agenda is the first reading of ordinance number 24, 2020, an ordinance making the annual appropriations for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. So here we are talking about 2021. The council communication included the major changes to the budget from 2020 to 2021. I'll just quickly go through these. From a general fund perspective, we are anticipating revenue to increase approximately 2.5%. Property tax revenue, we anticipate to be down by about 22%. That is simply due to reporting error, not because the actual value of homes and businesses are decreasing. We anticipate decreases in the highway users tax, investment interest, and municipal court fines, similar to what we saw this year because of COVID. We also anticipate a decrease in general government miscellaneous. We have increased $100,000 to the non-departmental to continue the engineering work for the levy certification. We will have some elections in 2021, so we needed to make sure that the line items reflect the operations for that. We were successful in getting the contract extended for lead that will show up in the police department. We went ahead and decreased the local alternative sentencing by $95,000. However, if you remember, council had a very good discussion that if something happens to lead, we may always have to come back with a budget adjustment in order to try to sustain that program. Not to the tune of the $565,000 though. We also are looking at a one-time increase in HR of $40,000 for the market salary survey. This is something we've communicated to both the public and different employee groups in the past. We have some increases related to risk management and our liability insurance, a slight increase for the audit expenses. We will be retiring one of our canines in 2021. And then need a one-time increase in order to have a replacement. We have a new fire rescue truck planned for 2025, so we're needing to increase our transfers out to prepare for that. We have increased our seasonal funding for streets in order to handle the additional workload. We're carrying over the grant-funded project for the Washington Addition engineering of $152,000. We had wayfinding signage in our 2020 budget, but because our partner, the marketing district, was faced with some shortages due to COVID, we are carrying that project over to 2021. And then we have $755,000 for equipment, fleet, and capital project improvements out of the general fund. The enterprise fund, we did not need any increases beyond the ordinance that council approved in 2018. That ordinance in 2018 set out an increase of 5% for water, 7% for sewer, and 4% for sanitation. We are again transferring in from debt services of $450,000 that can be used for the water distribution system and repairs. We are putting back in recycling revenue. That's at $15,000. We have some capital projects such as the aeration system repairs until we can fully replace that system. The chemical costs for the water treatment plant continue to go down, thankfully, because of the commitment council has to replacing those filter trains. And then we are planning on significant pieces of our water augmentation plan falling into place in 2021 for about $3.3 million. And then we have $431,000 in other capital projects. Our street fund, as promised to our residents, we are transferring $500,000 from the general fund to the street fund. We anticipate about $1.5 million in sales tax, and we will have approximately $1.7 million for street improvements. That's construction of the streets. Additionally, the commitment for $100,000 to the concrete replacement program and $221,000 for this street maintenance, usually seen as kind of the overlay program. Conservation Trust, we're having an increase for public trails, as well as the tennis and pickleball court improvements. We do have in our employee benefit fund increases, but again, it's a 6.5% increase overall for the plan. We had not seen any increases since 2016. Community recreation, we had a very good discussion about changing the allocation that we normally charge to this fund. So we did eliminate that in order to help with more capital expenditures coming out of the community recreation. And so we moved the debt from the golf course that was in the general fund into the community rec fund as well. So the debt is appropriately in the community recreation fund, but we are not charging the allocation costs. We also talked during the budget discussion of once some of that debt starts to get paid off, a percentage of that allocation cost will start being charged again to the community recreation program. And then there's a quick review over the funds, but essentially the item before council is first reading to approve the ordinance that sets out the 2021 budget and to set that for public hearing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooks. I really appreciate it. So council, if you have any comments, please raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Okay. Councilor Brawls.
Mayor, can I, before there's a motion, I forgot to mention one thing.
Sure, go ahead.
Councilor Broyles, were you getting ready to make a motion?
No, I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead and do a comment, but then I can mention my thing after before a motion.
No, I think this is a good budget, but the part that bothers me is the $40,000 for a salary study. You know, we're coming off of tough times here and there's a lot of people out of work. And now the city's going to spend $40,000 to do a salary study. And in my mind, nothing good's going to come out of this study. If the study comes back and says we are overpaying our employees, we're not going to reduce their salaries. And if the study comes back and says, oh, we're underpaying our employees, then we're going to have added pressure to increase their salaries. And I think right now, for the most part, I mean, probably not every position, but for the most part, our staff is being paid pretty well, at least above the private sector in a lot of instances. So that's the only thing that bothers me, and I just want to put that on the record.
With all due respect, Councilor Brawls, and correct me if I'm wrong, Council and Ms. Brooks, I think we did a study a few years back when it came to looking at how we paid our employees. And in small rural communities like ours, it's important to make sure that we stay on track and in tune what those salaries are, because it's hard to keep good staff. So doing studies like this just gives us that extra reassurance that we are in line with those professional pay grades.
I would agree, Mayor. The other part I would add is when you have an organization over 100 employees with as much diversity in the different jobs that you have, from a morale perspective, it's very important to be transparent with what your pay is and to be able to know how it compares to the market. I think if you do a market study and you know, as we did it 7 years ago, it was clear that we are not going to be paying towards the top of the range. We're not comparing ourselves to organizations that are not comparable. We're very careful on what we say is a comparable organization type of situation. But if those results come back with something that honestly would be surprising to me, saying that there is some significant increases needed, employees from a morale perspective at least know what that information is and it's transparent, but they can also understand what the fiscal constraints are and that we may not be able to provide the raises that the market might be able to provide. And I don't think, in all honesty, since we've done one 7 years ago and it's good to do them, and so at least about every 5 years, I don't anticipate that there's going to be some dramatic changes in the market. We've done cost of living increases. We've done some of those things, but it will catch if there's been some changes for certain positions. Additionally, as we've heard from the public over the last 2 years, related probably most specifically to what we pay our police and receiving some pressure along those lines, and if it's enough, what we've said publicly is that we were getting ready to do a market survey, and that the market survey would cover the entire organization as well as police and would provide us with information on what that pay should be. And so for me, it's a bit of a credibility issue when we've told the public and our employees for the last 2 years that this is coming up. To meet that, I think from a morale perspective, not doing it is worse than doing it and being transparent if we do not have the funds in order to make changes.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. I believe Councilor Brawls, your hand is still up. Okay, he put it down. You're going to put your hand, or you want to talk? You're on mute now, Councilor Brawls. Okay, you're good. All right, thank you. Councilor Griego.
Mayor, thank you. I want to thank Heather and the staff for all this hard work, you know, to put together a budget like this and try to move this community forward. It's a tough deal. And I appreciate David Broyles' comments, because we get hammered out there on the streets, you know, especially some people that don't have jobs or aren't getting paid or aren't getting raises. We get hammered all the time. And I understand what Heather's saying about the morale and how we should retain. We got a good group of people working for the city, and we should be able to retain them. By the same token, David is right. You know, we out there on the streets, they're saying the city gets paid the best, and this picture will draw whether they are getting paid the best or not. So with that, I'll make the motion. We pass this ordinance on first reading and set it for a public hearing on October 21st at 7 o'clock or soon thereafter.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor, there is one item I forgot to mention. The police chief and I were meeting. I'm not sure if council remembers, there's about 3 years ago, we authorized an additional FTE for police. For a few years, the previous chief had been asking for a few additional officers, and we gave them one. We didn't really dictate where that officer needed to be. We allowed the discretion to be with the police chief on if they needed it on certain shifts or those types of things. Now that Chief Anderson's been in his role, his assessment based on the caseload that the detectives are seeing and some of the additional work that we may want to do with drugs, that we would like to make that position a detective. So the only reason I'm bringing it up, because we're not adding an FTE, But for your second reading, I'm going to move the salary that's associated with that position from our personnel and operations division to the personnel line item that is in our support services. So again, it's not additional FTE, but it's moving it to the right division so it's showing appropriately when we do that payroll.
Heather, did you want that part of the motion, even though you're going to do it in the second reading?
It'll be covered in the second reading. I just wanted to make sure I mention it tonight so you're not surprised.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any other further discussion? If not, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Behill,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Counselor Carson.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Ms. Martinez and Ms. Brooks. Up next, we have under item 3A, public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 22-2020, adopting the 2020 model traffic code and ordinance for the regulation of traffic by the city of Alamosa, Colorado, adopting by reference the 2020 edition of the model traffic code with certain deletions and additions and repealing all ordinances in conflict therewith. It's a mouthful.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the second reading and public hearing on this ordinance adopting the 2020 model traffic code. As we discussed in the first reading, there is not much difference between the 2018 version, which we are currently operating under, and this 2020 version. So it certainly makes sense to keep current with the current version prevalent throughout the rest of the state. When the city adopts the model traffic code, traditionally it makes amendments, including deletions and modifications. The deletions are primarily to provisions that are irrelevant to us, and the amendments deal mostly with our angled parking and our bicycle restrictions on sidewalks. As the council communication for second reading mentions, there is a difference between the ordinance as presented at first reading and as before you now on second reading. And as luck would have it, the difference relates to an issue that arose, came to our attention between first and second reading, which it was some parking in a bike lane on First Street, and the realization that we had there was no provision in the model traffic code that addressed that. So the change between first and second reading is adding two provisions. One that makes it clear that you cannot park in a traveled roadway. And the second that specifically calls out you cannot park in a bike lane. And that's in a section that says you can't park in crosswalks, you can't park in various other places. So unless council has any questions, that's pretty straightforward.
Okay, council. I don't see any hands raised. So if anyone would like to make a comment, go ahead. If not, we can go ahead and make a motion.
Or open the public hearing.
Yeah, you
Sure.
gotta do the.
Thank you. Thank you all so very much. So now I will go ahead and open up a public hearing for the second reading of ordinance number 22-2020, adopting 2020 model traffic code. Okay, Ms. Martinez, will you give instructions to the attendees who would like to make any comments in regards to this ordinance, what they need to do so that they can raise their hand and be recognized during this public hearing?
Yeah, so if anybody wants to speak on this public hearing, if you're on the Zoom app, you'll see a raise your hand feature in the bottom of your screen. You can go ahead and click that. If you're on the telephone, then you can dial *9 and it'll raise your hand. I am not seeing anybody raising their hand, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. So at this time, I will close this public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion. Councilor Griego.
If there's no further questions, I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 22-2020.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I don't see any hands raised. Ms. Martinez, will you take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Carson,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Counselor Vijo.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, and thank you, council. Okay, up next, we have a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 23-2020, an ordinance adding a new Article 4 to Chapter 7 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa to regulate fireworks in the City of Alamosa in a way that mirrors the state code.
Council, as we discussed on first reading, what this ordinance essentially does is allows the municipal court to have jurisdiction over fireworks violations such that those can be written as municipal ordinance violations rather than as state statute violations, and can be addressed in municipal court rather than going through state court. So a more streamlined, quicker, and less burdensome from a what it looks like on your criminal history kind of perspective than the state provisions. This does mirror pretty much exactly, well, more than pretty much, this mirrors exactly the state fireworks code as it currently exists. State law says that we cannot be any more permissive with respect to fireworks than the state, but we could regulate them more stringently. This code does not do that, and just regulates them within the city exactly the same way that state code would regulate them. So unless there are questions, we can turn it over to a public hearing.
All right, so what we'll do at this time, thank you so much, Mr. Sweezow. We'll go ahead and open it up for a public hearing for the second reading of ordinance number 23-2020. Ms. Martinez, will you give instructions to the participants or attendees on how they can unmute themselves or either raise their hand so that we can recognize them if they would like to make any comments?
Yeah. So if you're on the telephone, if you want to speak, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. If you're on the Zoom app, just use the raise your hand feature button, which should be in your right hand corner of the screen.
Okay.
I don't see anybody raising their hand.
I don't see any hands either. Thank you so much, Ms. Martinez. So at this time, we are going to close the public hearing and bring the matter back to council for further discussion. Or a motion. Hey, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's no further discussion, I move that we approve ordinance 23-2020.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Counselor Carson,
Yes.
Counselor Vijo,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley. I think you were on mute.
You're on mute, Councilor Hensley.
Counselor Hensley.
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes,
Counselor Daniel.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
thank you so very much. Up next, we have on the agenda committee reports. Anyone have any committee reports? If so, raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Okay, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. We had the Alamosa Coalition, Homeless Coalition meeting, and you have those minutes, so I won't revisit, but I do think that the coalition is moving forward very productively, and we're really getting, I think, in a good groove. I also attended the Alamosa Housing Authority meeting last week, and they are doing some pretty neat things with their residences, working on ensuring that all of their residents have things they need during COVID. It's been really kind of quite uplifting. They're also working on changing some of their bylaws in minor ways. And I know they've already been talking to Eric about that and what is allowed as part of the city stuff and what's not. And so it just feels really like a positive group who's doing some really neat things for our community.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Daniel, Councilor Daniel. Okay, any other comments? Okay, I don't see any more. Brings us down to staff announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two items. The first one is, I think a lot of people saw the Channel 9 interview, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification. It was a quick interview of everything he asked me. I was surprised what actually ended up being in there, but I know that's not uncommon. I am grateful that they did communicate the message that while sales tax might be up for the city, which is good because we did not need to cut services or projects or those types of things, it's not a reflection of how COVID is hitting the community and what those implications are on our smaller businesses. And so I'm glad that Kyle was adding that at the end of his statement. However, the other part that I wanted to add is they did not include the information that we had provided of while sales tax might be up, which is surprising given what we anticipated in March. COVID has caused 3 other revenue sources to be down significantly. That does offset that. So if anyone watches the story, they may think in our general fund, we've got $378,444. To kind of add a little bit of perspective to that, we anticipated in our budget a 3% increase, and we've spent for that 3% increase as approved for the 2020 budget. So that reduces that 378 to actually then an extra 254,000. And then if you look at our state highway user tax, which was down because people were not driving and the tax wasn't getting charged. Our municipal court fines were down significantly because we simply weren't having municipal court. And our interest on investments is down significantly because of everything that's happened with the stock market. So if I take those 3 revenue sources, they're down a total of $206,000. So if I subtract all of that, we're actually only ahead of the budget by 48,000. So it's still positive because we thought we would be down for the general fund a little over $1 million. So it is still a very positive story, but it's not, I want to make sure from managing expectations, people are not under the impression that we have $378,000 to do something with. We actually have about 48,000. So it's a much different picture. The other thing I wanted to share just quickly with council is I was having my regular meeting with Councilor Hensley. It became apparent to me that while we talked during the budget, especially during the CIP, and I said, you know, we had to pivot on our grant from CDOT for the downtown and that we were going to buy some parklets. And then we're doing the lane reduction, which is in the CIP next year. It was included in a lot of different information and I didn't have any visuals. And so I'm not sure if you guys even remember me mentioning that. So since we have placed the order and hopefully within a month we will be getting these, I wanted to make sure you had a bit of a visual of what that looks like. And so we did order 6 of these. It's from a company that's new out of Durango. So they're ecstatic to be getting these kinds of orders. They're making them now. You can see it goes onto the street and then it's almost as seamless, you know, from a curb perspective. They are very, very nice. They are hardy. from a weather perspective. They'll withstand weather conditions and can be very, very tasteful. In addition to what you see here, we've purchased ones that then can have the attachments to have a canopy or a shade structure on the top. You can tell from those restaurants who've taken advantage of the outdoor space that that's really important to try to get the tables underneath a shade structure. So this is all being provided. It's funded through the Can Do grant through CDOT, and then our match through the CARES funding, because it is in relation to COVID. So I just wanted to make sure you guys are not surprised when you do see these. It might seem strange that we will be setting these up, even though it's probably the beginning to mid-November that we get it, but we have to in order to be compliant with the grant in the CARES funding. We can't just buy it and put it in storage to set up in the spring. That doesn't meet the criteria. So we're not crazy. We understand it might not get used in November and December, but we want to make sure that we're compliant with what those funding mechanisms are. And so with that, I do not have anything else to share.
Okay, I have a few comments. Not a few comments from me, but a few council members who have their hands up for comments. Ms. Brooks, the first one is Councilor Griego, followed by Councilor Daniel.
I got two questions. One on these things that you're gonna put up out there. Who's gonna get these restaurant deals?
So we couldn't, so essentially Deacon and Kathy approached every bar and restaurant that fronts on Main Street. We could not approach those that are right off of Denver because depending on how the striping works for CDOT next year, we may not be able to get the full 11 feet for some of those. So the next block down, and we weren't going to pick and choose. So it was whichever bar or restaurant wanted one, we went ahead and purchased it. Now it does take up approximately 2 spots of parking. So we will be sending out a letter to businesses. The business owners who said that they wanted this, know that it will take up 2 spots, but this will be temporary because next year when we do reduce the lanes down to 2, we'll pick up not only all those spots we kind of lost to this, but since we're going to be striping the parking, it means there's a more efficient use. So we'll actually pick up parking. So there will be a temporary reduction of about 12 spots since we've ordered 6 of these, but it was any business that wanted it. We weren't going to pick and choose which one was going to get this.
So that's pretty much all the restaurants downtown, aren't they? 6 of them, or did we miss?
Pretty much. I think Kathy was Maywa not interested.
Right, they were not. Thank you, Council and Heather. The restaurants and I guess areas that have sort of that kind of factor that would want those are, I would start from the west, are St. Ives, Kyle's Place, Woody's. Then, of course, I think, let's see, then it would be the Brew Pub, Square Peg. I'm trying to get everybody. The Purple Pig. And then we did ask everybody, and those were, I'm missing somebody. Heather, can you think of who that is?
9 o'clock.
Is it my brother's place?
Dang, I didn't expect.
My brother's place?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Yeah. So
What
there's
about Hoonan's?
them all together.
What about
Yes.
Hoonan's?
Hoonan's, I asked them and they weren't interested. They're really doing well with their takeout service. So they really didn't have any interest in serving at all. They're still not serving in the interior of their restaurant. So they're perfectly happy the way they are. So we ended up with 6.
Good. Thank you, Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
On my second question, sales tax. we're getting sales tax right now if you buy online, right? Is there a way of monitoring how much we get from that?
There's not. And unfortunately, COVID is going to really mess up any type of guesstimation we would try to do as well. So if it wouldn't have been for COVID, what we could have done is like look this year to date and kind of compare the revenue to see if there's some increases. But I think buying behavior probably changed dramatically during COVID, that it'd be hard to draw some of those references.
And I thought maybe you're at home, you get online and you buy and the city gets sales tax. That's why I thought that contribute to, to maintaining the sales tax rather than it dropping.
So we feel that it was two items. It was people weren't traveling, so they were actually staying here and shopping and buying things here locally. And we feel that it was the internet sales tax. Now, obviously, when people shop online, I'm glad, one, it's getting taxed because it evens the playing field with brick and mortar buildings that have always had to charge tax. But two, it's, while we get to keep it now for the services we provide, we always know, though, it's not necessarily helping a local business. So, but we'd rather have it taxed than not taxed, I can tell you that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. That brings us to Councilor Daniel.
Thank you. And Heather, I'm sorry, because you may not know yet, but do we have any thoughts on Halloween, just so people can plan?
So ironically, Andy and his crew at the library are trying to pull together maybe a haunted house or something. And as part of that process, they've been working closely with Della. And so I just got from Andy today some tips on it. So I think we're all going to get that information out maybe tomorrow or the next day. So before the end of the week, we've got some tips related to for Halloween.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments in regards to the staff announcement? I don't see any hands. Ms. Brooks, thank you for representing our city very well on 9 News. I got a chance to see that and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, council and staff, you all are troopers. I tell you, many of you have been on this call since 5:30. All right, so we're almost there. Hang in there. The next item we have is falls up under liquor licensing. Is that going to be Ms. Martinez, or is it going to be Mr. Sweezo? There you go.
That'll be me, Mayor, because what we're going to do is open up the public hearing. And just so the applicant who I saw in the list of attendees, well, he got moved over. Now he's a panelist. But anyway, for the applicant and anyone else wishing to participate in the public hearing, we will open the public hearing and I will have Holly actually confirm a few items that got taken care of. And then the representative, Mr. Lucondi from My Brother's Place, will give council a little background on the application and what it is that they're looking for and why they think there's a need for it. And we will then open it up for any member of the public who wishes to make a comment, first in support of the application, then anyone in opposition to the application. After that first instance where Mr. Lucondi presents the applicant's case, council usually weighs in and asks any questions of him that they may have before we move to the general members of the public. So that's kind of how the matter will proceed. And then I will turn it back over, Mayor, to you to close the public hearing and bring it to council for discussion. So if let's open the public hearing, and I'll start by asking Ms. Martinez to confirm that the legal notice for this hearing was published in the Valley Courier.
Yes, that's correct.
And the property was posted as of August 20th, and I presume that posting stayed up through today. Is that correct?
Yes. I
And-
believe so. I believe that. Do you still have it up, Mr. Lucandi?
Yes, we do.
Yes, it's still up.
Okay, and there's a photo of that posting that is in the Novus materials. We'll mark that as Exhibit A. And then there were petitions introduced by the applicant, which are in the materials, and we'll mark that as Exhibit B. My understanding from the clerk, who graciously counted them, was that there are 84 signatures on those petitions, and so that'll be Exhibit B. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Lucandi.
Yeah, first like to thank Holly for all of her help, just getting us started with that. That was, it was a lot of work for her to, get us going on it, and I appreciate that. But yeah, we're a restaurant that opened up March 3rd. We had about a week and a half of actual open, and then COVID hit us and kind of shut us down just to take out, which was pretty hard, pretty trying. From just the support that we had in our community has kept us open, which is fantastic. It's been a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and we're just feel like definitely a liquor license, some sort of a hotel restaurant license is actually what we're going for, would be very helpful for us. What else goes better with pizza than beer? But other than that, just yeah, we're really excited about it because we want to expand. We want to continue our growth in what we have, and that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lucandi.
Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Lucandi? I do, if you don't.
I do.
Very good, Mr. Griego.
Andy, what are your operation hours?
Our operation hours right now is 11 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock at night. And we have Tuesday through Saturday. We close on Sunday and Monday. We don't actually close. We actually do our baking and on those days. So we're actually open, but we do close to the public.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Councilor Daniel?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Lucandi, thank you for being here tonight. Have you ever had a liquor license previously?
I have not. No, I have not.
Okay.
This
So
will
what
be
are
my-
your, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
So what are your plans for ensuring all of your servers and everyone make sure that they are getting carded, all of that? Can you explain a little bit about what your process will be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my brother is actually more into the restaurant part of this whole thing, and we're going to follow all the guidelines and all the things very strictly. All of our servers are going to have to card everybody. That's just the way it is, and they'll all learn the whole process. And we'll be very, very strict on all of that. I can promise you that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We do have some trainings called the TIPS training and some other things that I'm sure we can get you information about if you don't have access to other training.
Anything would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Councilor Brawls.
Yeah, my question is, how did you establish need for a liquor license?
Basically through our customers. I get it every day where people are calling us and asking us, do you have a liquor license? A lot of people find us on Google from out of town, and we'll get a call from them and they'll ask us, do you have liquor license? Do you have beer and wine? And, we'd have to tell them, no, we don't. And that's basically our need is definitely from all of our customers we've gotten so far.
And you got 84 signatures on your petition?
Yeah, and during this trying time, it was hard to just get that. We've set it up at the bar. We have a bar up at the restaurant. We set it up there and just let the people, nothing was forced. We let the people sign it if they wanted to, and that was basically it.
So, so with your food, you serve pizza and what else?
We serve all of the Italian dishes. We serve chicken Parmesan, eggplant Parmesan, that's on pasta or subs. We also serve fettuccine Alfredo, yeah, all the Italian pasta dishes. We also serve hoagies and grinders and pizza. Yeah. And we would like to expand once we do establish our license. We would like to expand onto bigger and better things, like I'm saying prime rib, maybe some lamb shanks, things of that nature, where we can really do what we really needed to do. Right now, we're just basically a restaurant and deli, and we just want to grow. That's all.
And you understand all the rules and regulations,
Absolutely. Yep.
and you'll train staff. I think you heard the council.
Yep. We absolutely will. Definitely.
Okay,
And we are a family owned and operated business. My sister is the waitress, my brother is a cook. It's basically family. We do have a few hired employees, but yeah, we are definitely a family operated business.
So it's important to your business to have that liquor license, right?
Very, very important. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Brawls.
I don't see any other council members with a hand up, so we'll open it to anybody from the public who wishes to speak. Holly, if you could, again, tell people how they can let us know they wish to speak.
If you're on the telephone, if you're dialing in, dial *9, that'll raise your hand. If you are on the app, there's a button in the bottom of your screen that says raise your hand. Just click on that.
And the first hand I see is, oh, I'll let you do that, Holly. You're good at moving them across.
Okay, I only see one hand raised so far, and so it's Daryl. So I'm gonna allow you to talk now. If you could speak your name and last name, please.
And Daryl appears to be muted.
Am I there now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. My only comment is I believe the city at some point needs to limit the number of liquor licenses of whatever type they are. I understand and appreciate Mr. Lucandi needing this to grow his business and to sustain his business. However, I think at some point we need to, as a city, be it a liquor store license, we're only going to have so many. If it's a hotel restaurant, only so many, and that we limit these licenses. And it seems like we just keep, to me, it seemed like we just keep handing them out and just keep approving them. And I think at some point we need to limit those. And if one falls out, then somebody else can apply for that. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Daryl. From the comment and the tone of voice, I think this is Daryl Cooper. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. I don't see any other hands up.
Do not either.
Okay, before we turn it back over to council, given Mr. Cooper's comment, I'll just remind council, and this does appear in the written findings that I normally prepare, state law does not allow the city to set limits on the number of licenses that it will issue. You have to consider each application on its merits as it comes forward. Okay, so with that, I will close the public hearing and turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Sweezow. Okay, council. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to make a quick comment that I support this. Mr. Lucandi, I think he knows my order by heart when I go in: 2 chicken parms and a cannoli. Family owned, great place to eat. The upstairs is amazing. If you all haven't been up there, they've put a lot of work into it, a lot of money into it, spent many, many months, redesigning and redoing that building. I think we need to honor that hard work and these people who are trying to improve our downtown. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Counselor V. Hill. Counselor Griego.
I just want to, and I'm calling you Andy because I might mess up your last name. But Andy, I want to thank you for taking a vacant building that was downtown and helping us out there, you know, because the more that businesses we could put downtown, the better. And what you described as far as the food, you even got me hungry. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and dispense of the what is it, the 2-week, and make a motion that we approve this license as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I see Counselor Brawls has his hand up, so maybe he would like to have some discussion.
No, I just wanted to pass on what I visited with Holly, that our liquor license in Alamosa is down by 4 license.
Oh.
So our liquor license have been going down, I think, due to closures. So I'm not too concerned that we're having too many liquor licenses at this point. I am not in favor of having more liquor establishments, but I understand that people need to have, you know, people need to have a means to make a living.
Yeah.
And beer and wine is acceptable at the lower end. I'm glad it's not hard liquor. So thank you. I just want to make that comment.
Thank you, Counselor Brawls. Counselor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. So I too have spent a lot of time at my brother's place, so enjoy their food immensely. Normally, I would say in a time that is not COVID laden and where people can't go in and sign and things like that, I would have wanted more signatures, right? I would have hoped for that. I think though what I have appreciated is that the fact you were able to get 84, and the people who I have seen in your restaurant and the people I have talked to about your food and about having this be an addition to the service you already provide. I've personally had those conversations with people who knew this was coming up. And so I really appreciate what you have done and what you were able to do, especially in the challenging time, especially when you opened in March, which I can't even imagine what must have been going through your mind during that time. So thank you for what you did bring forward to us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor Daniel. I don't see any other hands up. Mr. Brawls, Counselor Brawls, do you still have a comment? I see your hand up, or
I'll get it down. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So I would just like to add to that. I applaud you, Mr. Lukandi, for opening up during one of the most challenging times and opening up one of the most challenging type of business to operate and being a restaurant. Also, like Counselor V. Hill mentioned, the remodeling upstairs is amazing, but I don't know if a lot of you know this, but he used a lot of repurposed material to get that look, and it's amazing. The other thing he forgot to mention, though, is the delicious desserts that they have up front as well. So I couldn't get not say that. So
Yeah.
all right, we have a motion, a second, no further discussion. Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Royals,
Yes.
Counselor Carson. I'll go on to Counselor Vijo,
Yes.
Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try Counselor Carson.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get it off mute in time.
That's okay.
My vote is yes.
Okay. The motion carried unanimously.
Okay. Thank you and congratulations, and we wish you much success.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate your support on everything. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, council, that brings us to the last item on our agenda before the executive session, council comments. If anyone would like to make some council comments, feel free to raise your hands and I'll recognize you so you can make those comments. Okay. All right. I don't see any. Oh, Counselor Daniel, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor. I was trying to find my button. I just wanted to remind everyone, so the Boys and Girls Club Gala will be virtual this year. It is on October 24th, but you can buy tickets, you can have parties at your house. And so I know it's just one of the fundraisers that many of us attend during the every year. So just wanted to let you know it was coming up October 24th and it will be virtual. Thanks.
I encourage everybody to participate. I think Councilor Daniel, they have like a little challenge going on where if they raise a certain amount of money, I might jump into a get dunked or something like that. I forgot what we settled on, but
The plan is dunking maybe, and maybe in like super cold water or something. There will be other challenges that come along. So really excited that the mayor volunteered for that.
but thank you. All righty. So, Councilor Vihil.
Yeah, just real quick. A little bit of good news. We have high school football is back this week. Alamosa is at home, and Sangre de Cristo, I think, is an at an away game, along with a lot of other Valley schools. So just good luck to all of our student athletes.
Thank you, Councilor Vihil. Thank you. And also this weekend for youth football, that they're planning this weekend as well on Saturday. If you want to see some of the little 5th and 6th graders and I believe 3rd and 4th graders play as well. Any other comments? All righty then. So we will go ahead and end this meeting. And then we're going to take a 5-minute break. So we'll come back at 9:35 and we'll sign in to the executive session link. I believe all of you may have that link from earlier. If you need Ms. Martinez to send a link to a different email address, feel free to do so at this time. But let's go ahead, take a quick 5-minute break and then go into
Mayor,
executive.
do we need to move into, like, do you need a motion?
Yes, we're going to need a motion in a second. Thank you, Councilor Daniel. So
Okay, Mayor, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-60402 4A and 4E to discuss the sale of city property along Highway 17 and instruct negotiators. Thank you.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Thank you, Councilor Daniel and Councilor Hensley. Okay, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Counselor Hensley,
Yes.
Counselor Carson, Counselor
Yes,
Carson,
yes, sorry.
Counselor Vihil,
Yes.
Counselor Griego,
Yes.
Counselor Broyles,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, let's sign back in at say 9:30. Yes, Councilor Griego.
I just want Holly to go ahead and send me that so I can get onto that line.
Okay, and Mayor, if you just want to confirm that no other business will be discussed after your executive.
Yes, no
Holly,
further,
could you
no further business will be discussed after we go into the executive session, but I believe Councilor Hensley and Councilor Daniel have their hand up.
Just, can you just send the link to everyone, Holly, please?
Yeah.
And Kathy as well, please.
Yes.
Okay, so
Thank you.
okay, anybody else? Any other comments? Okay, let's make it 5 minutes. It'll be 9:07. Okay, thank you.